Welcome to The Scoop, NANP's monthly educational webinar series. I am your host, Andrea Granson, Education Program Specialist for the NANP. These webinars are recorded and can be viewed at any time by logging into the members area. Okay, let's get started. Today, we present Battling Burnout and Building Resilience with Beth Romansky. Beth is an integrative nutrition health coach and founder of My Healthy Transitions Health Coaching. Beth is also the creator and co-host of the Wellness Warriors radio podcast, a recognized sugar detox expert, published blogger, and professional health educator. Beth has developed several online wellness courses, co-developed the Anytime Reset program, and frequently presents workshops and lectures on nutrition and living a healthy, balanced life. Beyond her entrepreneurial endeavors, Beth is Director of Professional and Continuing Education at Maryland University of Integrative Health. As a professional health educator, Beth also consults with fellow wellness practitioners on creating and implementing effective group wellness programs and online courses. So Beth, I want to welcome you once again. Thank you so much for joining us today. No doubt we're in for such a great presentation. I'm really looking forward to this one.
Thank you, Andrea, for inviting me to speak about this increasingly important topic. We've all experienced stress in our lives, myself included. So this is a therapy for me as well as I'm able to present this to the NANP community. I'm coming to you as the Director of Professional and Continuing Education at Maryland University of Integrative Health, which is a unique institution accredited as a university, and we are solely focused on integrative health and wellness programming. I oversee the Professional and Continuing Education Department, which is for individuals like yourselves who are looking to earn new skills and credentials and expand their knowledge in areas of expertise. So if you'd like to find more about us and what we offer, you can go to muih.edu/CE. As Andrea said, I am one of you as a practitioner, but also a health educator. But I am in this with you all as somebody who has experienced stress and burnout, and hopefully I've become a more resilient person throughout my life to be able to share these resources with you to gain more resilience throughout your own life to increase your well-being and those of your clients and patients. I'm a diplomat of the American Institute of Stress, and so that's something that I'm really proud of because they do a lot of great work. You might want to check them out as well if you're looking for evidence-based resources. Today we have a lot to cover as usual in my presentations. I love to give you as much as I can in these webinars, and I will also have the slides available to you, so feel free to sit back and take some notes. We're going to go on a journey together during this session. We'll start by discovering and recognizing the signs of burnout and chronic stress. We'll discuss ways that we can help ourselves and others that we work with manage stress. And also, we're going to talk a little bit about productivity because there's a lot out there saying that we should be more productive, but that's hard to do sometimes with the stressful world we live in. We'll also talk about building healthy habits to battle burnout. And I come to you as a health and wellness coach, so I want to share some of those evidence-based strategies as well with my nutrition professionals. And ultimately, we want to try to model this behavior so that we can be the example for our clients and or patients to apply these approaches into daily life. But before we get started, you may be very rushing around all day long, as many of us are, and rushing to view this presentation. And before we really begin and dig in, I'd like you to just take a pause. Take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. We'll talk about breath practice later, and you probably use this with yourselves and clients, but it's important to remember throughout the day multiple times how often we are short to breathe and how this is a very quick and easy and accessible access to down regulating the stress response. So I'm sure that many of you may do this, but you can also think about doing this before you have your sessions to ground yourselves with your clients and patients. And as always, I have my disclaimers, and those are: this content is educational in nature and not meant to serve as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, particularly related to mental health issues. I am a health educator and I'm a health and wellness coach. I am not a licensed healthcare professional in the mental health field, and there are numerous resources that if you are at that level where you do need some additional support, there's the Mental Health America that you can go to and send your clients and patients to. That is the great website that has free screening tools. And there's also a website that I'm familiar with called Mental Health Assessment that you can use. It's free and anonymous. And so there's a lot of resources out there, but I encourage you to seek those out or refer out if you need to. And first of all, this is not easy work. I am on the path with you. I am not talking to you. I am with you. And all I ask is to simply be open to any possibilities, take what works for you, and leave the rest. So let's begin with stress, burnout, resilience, and health. How are these all interrelated? Stress is something that is unique and different to everyone. And interestingly, it may mean something different to us at different points in our lives. So as I'm presenting this, think to yourself, what does stress mean to you? Stress, defined by the American Institute of Stress, is a physical, mental, or emotional strain or tension, or a condition or feeling experienced when a person perceives that demands exceed the personal and or social resources the individual is able to mobilize. Stress is a cycle throughout our body, and it isn't just once and done. Hans Seal, MD, PhD, is known as the father of stress research. In the 1920s, he coined the term stress in the context of explaining this pioneering research into the signs and symptoms of disease, curiously common in the majority of people who were ill, regardless of the diagnosis. And you may see this in your clients. You may see that you're having them eat everything just perfectly. They're doing everything, quote unquote, right. But their stress levels are impacting their overall health, mental, physical, emotional. And you can see by this diagram I've created, it's an interrelated system that we have. It's the nervous system that responds, whether or not we want it to or not. These impact our thought patterns, and those relate to our emotions. And then we have actions and reactions that may be controlled. We'll talk about that a little bit later. This all manifests in the physical body, and this is you. So people with a lot of pain, stress can be very related to that, not just from being in pain is stressful, but stress can cause pain. So it's a cycle. Many of you know this, but it's important to have this as a grounding primer, just so we're all on the same page. Also, many of you know about the autonomic nervous system, the ANS, the sympathetic nervous system, or the parasympathetic nervous system. These two areas of our body that control the fight or flight, as we are commonly known to refer to it, or the rest or digest. So I will divulge and share that, I have the digestive condition. So working through a lot of the stress that I experience daily and just in my life has helped with that condition. And with that rest and digest, we know a lot of digestive conditions are impacted because our digestion shuts down when we are in a stress state. So these symptoms that we see are manifesting in the body. And the excessive nervous activity that's prolonged in the sympathetic state is what leads to this chronic inflammation and illness. We also are familiar with the acute and chronic stress responses because not all stress is bad. Short-term stress helps us perform. If you are needing to perform in surgery, if you are a healthcare provider where you are in, that situation where you need to have those hormones coming so you can respond and be focused. If you're an athlete, if you are in a first responder position, those are all important to activate. However, we are also in these desk jobs that we are entrepreneurs, perhaps, where you're in charge of everything and you don't have enough coming in and you don't know how to manage the day because there's too much to do and you're working nonstop. And sometimes that's okay to meet a deadline, but when it's prolonged and then you have on top of it the family and the kids and the situation that the bills are coming in and maybe the environment that you're in is not conducive to being stress relieving, and you have the political environment, social media, all of these things coming at you, and this is what is the problem. And so that's where we have the chronic stress is more of the prolonged that we're really focused on today. And if you're a nerd like I am, you may want to dig into more of this research by Sale and his proposed stress theory and how this really responds in the body, because this is really beyond my area of expertise, but I do like learning about these really nerdy topics. So take a look at this and how the stress mechanism has been outlined in the body. And many of you that maybe have this level of experience have researched this before. But stress can come as a result of fear, anxiety, trauma, surgery, pesticides, food additives, just all of these things that are happening. And this is an interesting way to diagram how that impacts our body. We also know at the very basic level, this is easier for many people to understand, that we have stress hormones being released as a result. Many metabolic and immune function systems, as you all know, are impacted by chronic stress. And that's important for our work, obviously. And that results in inflammation, which we are all trying to reduce. Of course, that is not a good situation in the healthcare field. And then it's more about that also mental and emotional health that stress can manifest and that more people are familiar with, particularly related to this presentation being presented on the hopefully tail end of a very prolonged pandemic. And then again, the physical health implications. The micro stressors, if you're working with someone or yourself, this presentation is being presented to you not just from that clinician perspective, because I want you to have these tools to share with your clients in your clinical practice, but I want you to think about this for yourselves too, because it's not one or the other. A lot of times in this field, we know what to do, we may not always do it. And this is why I said I'm on this path with you. Doing this presentation reminds me of how I need to manage all of these things in my own life as well as I teach this and be a model. So think about all these micro stressors that impact our day to day. Feedback from a boss who's not helpful to eliminating this mental and emotional health. We've talked a lot about the Great Resignation recently. So people we are working with may have a lot of stress just in the workplace that is impacting their health. And that's important to remember. Where are these areas of stress coming from? The chronic stress impact, just as a primer for all of you, we'll have these slides, but you can share this again in your practice about all the implications of this that you are all probably familiar with that come from the immunity, the brain fog, you're just angry all the time and acting out, to more serious chronic health conditions like autoimmunity and anxiety, diabetes, depression, and cardiovascular disease, and high blood pressure. But let's take a pause here and think about ourselves. So common stress responses are fight, flight, freeze, and you may not have heard of one that's also added in there that's adapted from another researcher in this field called fawn. So as I'm presenting this, think about how you react to stress. I tend to be in the fawn area where I people please. I have a hard time saying no and setting boundaries, and I put others' needs before my own. But I have grown leaps and bounds in this area, and you can too. And your clients may be in this bucket. So I also am in the flights where I worry, I'm a perfectionist, I overwork sometimes. And so interestingly enough, if you can identify these within yourself and your clients, you can start to say, hey, I see this, I'm reacting, I'm stressed. This is my common response to stress. How can I better manage these responses and protect my own well-being? So these stress response triggers are coming not just from the outside world, because we are all going to experience stress. These can be microaggressions, environment, but our thoughts can even trigger stress in that inside world that's in our head. Stress in the workplace, many of us may be entrepreneurs, but many of us are also working with clients who are in a workplace setting. And this is real for employers. If you employ people, you need to think about this also. How are your actions related to workplace stress? And this is costing millions and billions of dollars in healthcare. So we are important aspects of the healthcare system in trying to teach this and work with clients, not just on their nutrition, but on their stress management. And a term came out during the pandemic. It resurged, I should say. Corey Keyes was a sociologist who originally coined the term languishing. And it's really about that absence of well-being. It's that middle ground. You're not clinically diagnosed as depressed, but you're not flourishing. And this you can, I guess, think of as that meh, that bleh feeling. You're just not motivated to operate at your full capacity. You probably felt like this. I know that during the pandemic, this was a very common thing. And this is a leading into how we are feeling not well. And so it's okay to feel like you're languishing. And it's important to say that we are in this together. But it's also thinking about how do we get out of this in the middle meh state, that emoji that you have. It's just that bleh feeling. So we can also look at some statistics from Mental Health America that this has increased, that 99% of people are impacted by workplace and mental health because of their stress and early signs of burnout. So what is burnout? The term burnout was coined in the 1970s by the American psychologist Herbert Freudenberger. He used it to describe the consequences of the severe stress and high ideals in helping professions, us, right? Doctors, nurses, for example, who sacrifice themselves for others would often end up being burned out, exhausted, listless, and unable to cope. So interestingly, that's really expanded. So it's not just for helping professions, but teachers, career-driven people, entrepreneurs, people who are just managing a household can be burnout because you want to be the best parent ever. It's not one category, but burnout is. So you can look at this list here, though. Feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job, feelings of negativism or cynicism related to the work that you're doing, and reduced professional efficacy. We all may feel this from time to time, but you need to recognize when you are burned out. And we're going to talk about strategies to figure out what to do if you realize that this is you. Burnout also has not just gone from this occupational category. The World Health Organization originally categorized it in that context. However, burnout can be personal as well, I believe. And so this is an interrelated system. So if you have occupational burnout on top of personal burnout, think about that together. It's just a really problematic situation. So hopefully we can get to the point where you're not burnout, either one, but there's going to be circumstances, obviously, that are within your control and others that aren't. Phases of burnout also can be measured, obviously, through inventories. However, I'm not sure that we really need to measure burnout. You can see emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and personal accomplishment are areas that are dimensions that you can see as related to burnout. But if you want an inventory, this was developed, the Maslach and Jackson was probably one of the most namely instrument originally in 1981 that was developed in relationship to measuring burnout. So the types of burnout are also very unique, but the 12 stages of burnout within this continuum, I highlighted one in purple here for a reason, because we're going to get to that soon. But you can see, and I was really actually kind of surprised myself to think that pushing yourself to work harder and excessive ambition are early stages of burnout. And it's not to say like that you can't be goal-oriented and work hard, But it's when it gets to these points where you start to then neglect yourself, then you start to just be in this bubble where you're feeling, why am I doing this? What is my purpose? You're just withdrawn. And then that leads to eventually just pushing, that you are mentally and physically in a state of exhaustion and collapse. So there is no currently or officially accepted definition for burnout, but you can see that this is helpful if you're looking at some stages. There are also burnout subtypes. So it's not always that you feel like you're overly stressed, but even some under-challenged people feel burnout because the work is unrewarding. So again, I'm going to pass through some statistics here in case you'd like to share this with others, but it's really about this continuum where you have stress, more situational, then it becomes a strain, which is chronic, and then it goes to burnout, which you're just exhausted and you're detached and you really can't operate to your full capacity. You can see some of the behavioral, emotional, cognitive, and physical signs which you're aware of in your practice and possibly within yourself. So again, this presentation is presented to you so that you can use this information within your own life as well as with your patients and your clients. But I really think that these are important to start to recognize that it's okay. It's not like you should feel bad about yourself, but I do think that we shouldn't live in these states. So let's talk a little about resilience, because we all want to be more resilient, and it's a buzzword that we hear. And great, you can get some social media impact. If you're talking about resiliency, maybe you can be this resilience expert, and it's really important right now. A lot of companies are talking about this as well. But resilience has many definitions, as all of these terms do. But you can define it perhaps as the capacity to recover quickly and bounce back from life's difficulties and adversities and be able to adapt to change. So change is happening beyond our control. Change is happening always. So we're going to have to be resilient to when things change, but there's going to be more dramatic situations where we need to be more resilient than others. And this requires us to be actively engaged to develop resources to sustain well-being, self-awareness, mindfulness, self-care, positive relationships, and purpose. I'm going to go back to that slide just so you can look at that again. So it's not just about being resilient and it's a word. It's really about you cultivating these skills and helping your clients to cultivate these as well. And the great part is that it doesn't mean you're not going to have stress or distress in your life, because this is what life is about. This is how we live. And of course, some of us have more than others. I'm not going to negate that point, but we can have profound personal growth as a result of it. So if you'd like to dig into the research again and see what's going on, this is the NIH, National Institutes of Health. There's a trans NIH resilience working group, which is doing some really interesting research around resiliency, particularly in a healthcare setting. So if somebody has surgery or there's an aging population, you may be working with someone who had a stroke, for example. So how do we build up ourselves in this prior state to have the healthiest place we can be, so that if we do encounter some very challenging health circumstances or life circumstances, how can we then become resilient to recover faster? This is an interesting study. You can actually look at this infographic and do some more research on your own. But as I stated before, we can rethink resilience, not just from that bounce back to where you were point, but we can think about it as bouncing forward. So it's about personal growth. So think about that for a moment. In what areas of your life have you become more resilient as a result of a challenging circumstance? And you may be wondering, is resilience genetic? Sure, there may be common traits that are more genetically related to something that is your personality. However, that's just part of the equation. You can actually learn and cultivate these skills. And these are important to think about as you're working with yourself and your clients and thinking about, how can we become more flexible? How can we think more optimistically? How can we feel like we have confidence in our ability to cope and see things as challenges versus just threats? There are multiple pathways to being more resilient. Goal-directed self-talk is something you can actually use as well with yourself and your clients. You can say, think about what you're saying in your head. We've talked about this probably before. You may have said to yourself in a workout, for example, I can do this. Your coaches are pushing you to go forward and, saying this too shall pass, these common phrases. But talking to ourselves in more positive and empowering ways is actually shown through research to help your resilience capacity increase it. So again, like I said, resilience may vary across multiple domains of life. You may feel like you have the capacity to be more resilient in times of your life, more so than others. But let's just take a moment to think about, what was a time in your life where you faced an adversity or challenge, and how did you overcome it and grow as a result? What did that experience teach you? I know many of you can bring up things. I wish I could have a live presentation with you, because it's great to hear how people have grown and increased their resilience capacity through challenges. So now let's talk about stress again and how we can better manage stress so that we don't have to become burned out all the time, and we can actually be more resilient as a result by being more proactive about managing our stress. So quick strategies to relieve stress in the moment. I already discussed briefly about the 4x4 breathing method. This is very common to practice because it's accessible, it's free, and that really regulates your internal system so that you can tap into that parasympathetic rest and digest system at any point and anywhere that you are. Maybe you're going to board a plane and you're completely stressed because you're late. You can start to breathe. I know that I work with my father through a lot of very painful situations, and we work on breath, and it really helps as well. So you've also probably heard about the heart rate variability regulation, maybe wearing devices to regulate that. But HRV is a measure of the variation in time between each heartbeat, and this is controlled by our ANS. It works regardless of our desire to regulate its conditions. However, our heart rate, blood pressure, breathing, and digestion are impacted by the ANS. And so we can actually think about this and how we use the breath to regulate our HRV and stimulate that, tap into that vagus nerve, which the term vagal tone refers to how active the vagus nerve is. And that is one of the largest nerves in the body. And so really what we want to tap into that is we want to say to ourselves, higher vagal tone equals more parasympathetic equals less physiologically stressed. So when your HRV is an indicator of vagal tone, so with higher HRV, that correlates to higher vagal tone. So that's decreasing your heart rate, slowing down your respiratory rate, decreasing your blood pressure. All of this is down-regulating that nervous system, and that's really helpful to down-regulating the stress response. Another thing you can do is just think about things from an observer's mind. We'll practice that in a moment. How do you step outside of yourself and really look at the situation objectively? We have habitual reactions. So something may be happening where you get a nasty email in your mind from your boss, and you think, oh my gosh, I'm already overstretched with these deadlines, and this does not sound like something that I needed today, and you're just going on the story. Well, a lot of times you think, assume positive intent, API. Think, were they really reread that email and say, is this how they write to everybody, or is this personal? Maybe they're having a bad day, and maybe they're getting a directive from their boss and they're stressed out. So putting things into context can help as well, just taking yourself out of that situation. And that's also related to story versus phenomena. What's our perception of a situation versus a fact? So maybe you are stuck in a traffic jam. Well, this could be the end of the world. You are going to be late for an appointment. Well, there's not much you can do about it at that point. So what can you do to say, okay, I am just being stressed, so I can't change the circumstance. So what can I do to really just think about, maybe we need to reschedule this appointment or interview. How can I get in touch with the person? They'll probably, feel like, oh, I understand, these types of things. So shifting from that habitual reaction to more of a choice can be very empowering. So Maybe you say, I am so frustrated. But maybe you say, maybe I'm accepting that I'm feeling frustrated because you are not frustrated. It's an emotion. You're feeling frustrated. Maybe valid that you're feeling that way. But also, you're choosing to feel frustrated in some aspects. So that is a choice where if we think about it, we can also practice this with our clients, where in a practice, you want to try to figure out, how can we coach people to recognize how we can be our own self advocates for our well-being and what's going on in our minds. So it's really not about avoiding stress, because feeling like a failure as a result of being stressed isn't the most helpful perspective. And just telling your client that you got to reduce your stress, you shouldn't be stressed. That's how, giving them that advice, they probably already know that, and they don't, know what to do about it because they need more coaching and helping and support. Adapting to stress is where we should be. So that's where we feel like, I may have stress, but how can I better adapt and handle it? And that leads into becoming a more mindful person. Just being aware without judgment. Studies suggest that focusing on the present can have a positive impact on health and well-being. That's from an article in the NIH News and Health newsletter. Mindfulness-based treatments have been shown to reduce anxiety and depression, and they can lower blood pressure and improve sleep and even help people cope with pain. That's again from the NIH, an article in 2021. So these are some slides where you can actually work with your clients to say, let's talk through this. What did you notice after skipping lunch? How did you feel the morning after staying up so late? How did you feel after responding to work emails until 9 o'clock or later? I know I'm in there sometimes. I don't sleep well after those nights. And were you drinking enough water after you got that migraine, that headache? Just observing. And again, you can think about this in terms of positive behaviors. So how did you feel after you exercised today? And how did you feel after you had that good night's sleep? And how can we, reinforce these through thinking, I felt great. I want more of that. Eating mindfully without distraction. Did you digest your food better? So practicing these, just noticing things, are really important. And it doesn't always have to be so basic to nutrition and fitness. It's, how did you feel after connecting with a good friend? Many of us may have felt pretty good after that experience. And that's what leads us to meta-awareness, being aware of what we're aware of. So it starts with not even saying, I'm going to change anything. Just notice without trying to change yourself. That's a great place to start, as well as with others. So daily check-in questions could be something like this, and you can make your own or, talk to your clients about what do they want to check in and say. You could say, how's my body feeling today? Sometimes I say to myself, I'm not feeling so good, so I think I need to actually not exercise or go back to bed. That can actually be really helpful on some days, because stress can be exercise if you push yourself too hard. And not everybody thinks about that. They just push. Just think about, how can I connect today to myself and to others? And maybe I need to not connect. Maybe I need to be an introvert. Or how can I feel healthy today? What would that look like for me? And how can I feel purposeful today? It's not about adding more to your plate, but what would actually make me feel like I am purposeful, either in taking care of myself by pulling back and getting grounded, or pushing forward and saying, I feel great. I'm going to, just knock out these projects today. So I hope this helps you put some things into context as we talk about being more productive as related to stress. I love the book called Essentialism. You may have read it, but it's by Greg McKeown, and it's not a word that he coined, but it's a great book because I've been becoming more of an essentialist in every aspect of my life as I try to recover from being a perfectionist and going above and beyond all the time, which is great sometimes. But really, there's too much on the plate sometimes. Sometimes things I even want to do is too much on the plate, and you just can't do them all at once. And so an essentialist really gives yourself that permission, going back to read that to you so you really see it, to stop trying to do it all, to stop trying to say yes to everyone, even yourself. I've had to have that conversation with myself. And that's the way we can all make our highest contribution to the things that really matter in life. This is in life, this is in work, this is in everything. So it's not about getting everything done or more things done. It's about getting the right things done. You may have heard that before, but it's important to constantly check in on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. Really, what's essential here? Do I really need to write a actual, plan for somebody where they only a nutrition plan for somebody when they ask me for one question about this particular food? Maybe going above and beyond can be helpful in some circumstances, but sometimes you don't have that luxury and maybe you need to get some sleep. So this is what is essential right now. Getting that deliverable done is essential right now. Maybe you want to create a 10-page guide to eliminating, foods that are high in FODMAPs. But maybe right now, the most important thing to grow your business is not that. It's completely something else. It's about going to this networking event so you can meet somebody who can be on their podcast. So really think about what are the essentials, and that's how you contribute the best. More is not always better. So setting healthy boundaries can be difficult for many of us or the people that we work with. These are some things to ask yourself if you're thinking, am I not really setting boundaries? Because I ask myself this a lot. And when I start to feel taken advantage of, and I feel more irritated than I do feeling like I'm contributing and drained, that's when I say I'm not setting boundaries correctly. So there's a balance here. It's hard. It's a skill we have to cultivate. I can't cultivate that for you right now. I can work with people as clients to help you, and you can work with others to do this as well. But essentialism in practice is really just not being controlled about, everything that comes but your way. Things are going to come your way. I have a boss right now. I'm an entrepreneur, but I also have a boss. We have obligations we have to fulfill at certain times. But focusing on what I can control is empowering. And your clients may say, well, I can't, all these excuses, right? Well, great. All right. So let's just think, what can you control? What can you design versus being on default mode all day long? The email vortex is very, very great for being on default mode, where you look at your email and you just waste 3 hours on emails instead of completing a project you wanted to do. So mindset is one thing we have to control as well. So it sounds, again, a cliche, but it really is helpful when you think about the world and what we can focus on. So again, I completely understand that there are societal constructs here that are impacting what people tend to value in terms of productivity. They tend to think about quantity versus quality, but you need to go back and just push back a little bit and think about things in a different way. So there's this example here, which you can even do with somebody if you'd like to. Many of you have seen this, but I want to show it to you again as an exercise. So you see these 3 jars here, and you have sand, little pebbles, and big rocks. If you try to put all the big rocks into the jar with sand filled with the little itty bitty things that are not important, they will not fit. So think about the big rocks first before you focus on all the little sand pieces that are cluttering your time, is valuable, and your life and your mental energy. So it's really about this balance of energy systems. We will have some energy depleting things we have to do, or we may be doing. But if you're not balancing that with energy renewing activities, this is going to be a sure path to burnout. So building that resiliency in the next phase, you may have heard it already and you may teach it, but there's never amount of times we can say it. It's about prioritizing our self-care. But you also can redefine what that means to you. It's care of self. It's filling up that cup. It's not going to look the same to everybody. And this is a poll that I usually ask, but I want to ask this to you on the webinar, and you can ask this of your clients. So, how do you engage in self-care activities, and how often is that? The World Health Organization defines this term self-care as our ability to really do this ourselves and to maintain a state of health. It's daily habits, daily lifestyle behaviors with influence health management. So simplified, that can be proactively and consistently taking care of yourself and your health. I'm going to go back to that slide just a second. So there is something to be said about that garden. Many of us, I don't garden, but you think about what's in that soil. If you're not taking care of that ground, that soil, the plants will not thrive and grow. Same thing as human beings. And again, reframing these common barriers you're going to hear and you hear in your brain about self-care. I don't have the time for this. I'm in Zoom meetings all day long. I don't have the money for this. I can't get to a spa or take a vacation. This is not something that I feel comfortable with. I don't feel like I'm deserving of this self-care. You may have these norms and beliefs that people around you are in a burnout culture, as many of us are. People are wearing burnout as a badge of honor today, which is something that people are pushing back on. So redefine that for yourself and for others. It's not necessarily going on vacation, although we should do that, I think. You can think of it as a recalibration, a rejuvenation, something that resonates with you, whatever you want to call this. This is a list of things you may think of as self-care. It may just be that you read a book for pleasure sometimes, maybe not work related. Maybe you take something off your plate, you outsource meal delivery. Maybe you walk your dog. Maybe you take a 5-minute stretch break. Maybe you invest in your professional development like you are today. There's a lot of things here that people can write down, but it's something that needs to be personalized to you and your clients. So think about it in terms of not just something that you're reactive to when you're feeling overly stressed or burned out, but it's something that you are proactively doing on a daily basis. Shifting from sporadic to a sustainable method of self-care is important as well. I have this self-care menu, which you may want to think about using, where you have daily and weekly practices, shorter things that take 5, maybe 1 minute, breath practice, 5 to 15 minutes. And then those longer practices, you have this menu. You're having your nutrition menu, your diet menu. You also have this as well, and thinking about how these can be incorporated into routine. So invest in your well-being, encourage your clients to use this as a bank, because when you get stressed or burned out, if you are at the point where you are in this continuum, this hamster wheel, if you haven't been making these daily, weekly, monthly deposits in this little bank of energy and renewal, you're going to be in a situation where you are chronically ill and experience a lot of, just obviously not living your best life, right? So how can we incorporate in this to real life? Just know that do your best on any given day and start where you are. So I ask you and others you work with to start simple. As a health coach, we think, how can we start small? One action step, a tangible, very, very specific thing. So being less stressed is not tangible, or, that's not really going to get you there. So maybe you need to think about something very actionable where you are not going to check emails after 7 o'clock for this week. Notice how you feel. Being grateful can also be very helpful as an accessible way to start. If you're not feeling like you have the capacity to really engage in self-care, gratitude is a great way to tap into this. There's a lot of benefits to being more grateful. You actually achieve more, and you can be a better individual in your practice as well as in your personal life. And so I like to think about gratitude as not just being something that's, a buzzword out there, but if you put this into practice, there's interesting things that relate to our health as well. In that research has shown that gratitude improves sleep, our ability to exercise more, and actually have a better mood and feeling more optimistic and having better cardiovascular health and even adhere to our healthy behaviors better and have better immune systems. So there's a lot of benefits related to gratitude. You can see in one study with healthcare providers, just doing this practice twice weekly together reduce perceived stress and depression. And this can also lead to us as health and healthcare providers providing that level of service that we need to in these professions. So I also like gratitude because it's easy, accessible, and free. So practicing gratitude in daily life could be paired. To make it more frequent, you could do this with daily activities, such as things you do every day, like brushing your teeth. You could be grateful before a meeting you have at work, or you could do this within your practice. You could list one thing that you're grateful for today. And if you can't do it for yourself, if you're particularly challenged by many things in your life at this particular point in time, you could be grateful for others or other situations, because gratefulness does not require that you need to be happy all the time, that you need to always have a positive spin on things. But sometimes it can just be like, I had a good cup of coffee today. I mean, it doesn't have to be momentous. And then sometimes you can think, I am so glad that I'm living in a safe environment right now. And I have the ability to choose what I'm doing, for a living. It's a continuum of things you can be grateful for. I'm grateful for yoga pants on Zoom meetings, for example. So ask yourself, what are you grateful for today? Discovering wellness and really what is well-being is the next set of slides I'm going to show you. And we can talk about well-being all day long, but it's important to think about this in terms of ourselves and the clients that we work with, that there is a personal responsibility here that we can take in many aspects. Some things are outside of our control, of course, but what we can think about within our control is the most impactful way to influence our well-being. And the dimensions of wellness, you may be familiar with as well, that are outlined. There's multiple dimensions of how we can contribute to our wellness. It's an active process through which people become aware of and make choices toward a more successful existence, according to the National Wellness Institute, which is an organization I'm involved with as well. It's a great organization trying to outline these areas of well-being. There's also a term that you probably use or have familiar with as well, which is called bio-individuality, uniqueness to everyone. I work in health coaching from this approach. There's no one size fits all. And self-efficacy is something that we can build within ourselves and our clients to have the individuals that we work with increase their belief in his or her capacity or their capacity to execute behaviors necessary to produce specific outcomes, of course, related to health. And so if we can think about how can we help others become more confident and have that self-efficacy as a component, we can increase well-being. These domains are vast, so you can feel like you are well in various physical aspects, psychological, social, professional development, economic. All of these things impact our well-being. But the National Institute of Health, the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, I should say, in 2021, has summarized all of these various definitions of well-being and frameworks to the extent to which people are doing well in life, a positive state. And that can be regardless whether or not they are experiencing some disease or dysfunction. So interestingly, numerous meta-analysis research studies have correlated greater sense of purpose and well-being with better health, meaning less chronic health conditions, better health markers, and increased longevity. So there we go. Cultivating well-being, you can see I've also broken this down to multiple areas of well-being, which you'll see here on this slide, which impact our health-related quality of life. Now, how to create this personal wellness plan with ourselves and our clients. We use at MUIH, and I will use in my health wellness coaching practice a version of this, something called a wellness wheel, which you may have heard of as well. There are many forms of this, but you'll get these slides, and attributing this to my own original content, you can reference this, that this is attributed to my content as well as MUIH's content for this slide. that feel free to use this in yourself and your practice. What are these dimensions of wellness here? Movement, nourishment, sleep, rest, stress, family, friends, social support, something related to purpose, spirituality, growth, professional aspects of your life, career, fun, leisure, recreation, all these things. And then, of course, you have something that's other because you need to define this for you. So you can do this exercise to see where you are strong and where you are a little bit lacking. And then you can help that to guide creating health and wellness goals. So these need to be specific, measurable, achievable or attainable or actionable, I should say, realistic, time bound. And I like to add, this is my personal thing, important. So I have not just a SMART goal approach that some of you may use. I also add the I to make it important because you do not want to chase after someone else's goals. Just because someone else is doing it on social media does not mean that is relevant or to you something that would impact your life in a positive way. And you shouldn't think about it that way. Plus, you may think about things that are just there that you could do, but are they important to really what's going to impact your well-being? So this goal-oriented approach is also helpful to think about in the terms of action before outcome. So someone may say, I am wanting to eat better. You all know, what does that mean? That could mean a million different things to so many different people. Does that mean that you feel like you need to eat less? Maybe you want to eat more mindfully. Maybe you need more vegetables. Like what does that mean? So you can create some more specific time-oriented goals around that. And it's great to have long-term goals, but it's also better in the short term to make it small. So maybe you try today. Maybe you try this week. How did that go for me? So you can adjust. Is that reasonable? Are you going to go from zero activity to running a 5K? I mean, is that realistic, right? Do you not like to wake up at 7 o'clock? So why would your goal of I'm going to go to a spinning class at 7 o'clock in the morning be really realistic for you? So I like to think about this and just say, what will work for me? What can I do? Then I can build from there. What's the action before the outcome to get there? So you may have also heard of this, but in health wellness coaching, this is frequently used, the trans-theoretical model of change. You may be working with people who are in various stages here. Most likely, you're working with people who are probably in that contemplation, preparation, action phase. Pre-contemplation, it's really difficult for you to focus on those people. You can't change people's minds. I'm a health coach. We may try, but if you're getting clients and they're in just not really wanting to do this, contemplation is a maybe. You want to help people mostly prepare, plan. Don't overlook that stage. Plus, don't overlook the time spent in the action stage and the doing. Just because you try a keto diet for a week does not mean that you are ready to be in maintenance. Maybe you haven't really thought about the things that are going to keep you going if this is working for you. And that practice, that confidence will be built over time. And that is what leads to self-efficacy. Termination can happen at any point here. Maybe you, quote unquote, fall off the wagon, right? That's going to be okay, but you have to prepare for that. And I have some tips here that I use in my health and wellness coaching practice, which is first define that why. Many times we fail at forming healthy habits because we get caught up in perfection and we think about, things that really aren't important to us. And they may be, again, something else that we read a magazine and we read a book and we thought we should do this. Small successes also help us build our self-efficacy and our confidence to continue. Start simple. If you need to do one push-up or, try one herb instead of overhauling the whole diet at first. Know yourself. Like I said before, are you someone who does not really do well with being told what to do? So you need to be the one that's guiding the plan. Then develop that plan. What is the plan? What actions are you going to take? Get started. Don't worry about if you're going to be right or wrong or do it well at first. Adjust and refine. If it doesn't work out well for you, think about, all right, well, that didn't go so well. I tried to meditate for an hour yesterday, but I didn't have the time for that. So that was probably overreaching. So adjust and refine. Be okay with that. And practice and repeat. Acknowledge success along the way and immediately if you can. And build and progress. The number one key to success is do what works best for you and your clients. We all may think we have the answers, but this is all really unique. And we need to be okay with that, and thinking about coaching people through that process. So how do we create a culture of wellness? Well, this is where I'm going to lead to towards the end here. In the social ecological model of health behavior theory, we have multiple domains here again, where we've been focusing mostly on that individual, where we have knowledge, attitudes, and skills that we're able to cultivate and impact. We then can, by modeling these behaviors and being that example, have an impact in our interpersonal domain, family, friends, social networks. So many of you may work in group programs. This is a great model for that because you can see that interrelation between the people within. And so we are also embedded within organizational systems. So like I said before, we have things that are impacting us, that we're in this world together. We're not all just in our own little bubble, even though we may feel like it sometimes. We're also living in communities, right? This also impacts how we interact as a society. And then ultimately, hopefully, we can have better public policies at the national level that can benefit us in these other domains. But that's, again, something we may not be able to impact right away. The social determinants of health is important to think about as well as we think about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. This is a diagram from Healthy People 2030. We need to realize as well in the people that we're working with that health disparities can be a significant source of chronic stress and anxiety. So if you'd like to dig into this further, the Healthy People 2030 diagram shows how we're trying to look at this from that domain and how our communities, how our neighborhoods, how access to healthcare and education and economic circumstances and stability can impact our health and our disease risk. The National Wellness Institute, like I said before, has a great diagram here that talks about multicultural wellness and how all of these things can impact our well-being. But finally, how are you to create this? If you're in a workplace wellness role, how can you work with organizations to do this? The CDC has a very research-based and very straightforward plan where you can assess first at the individual, organizational, and community levels within that organization. You can then create a plan based upon that, along with leadership support and resources and communication strategies. Then you can implement that plan through programs, policies, benefits, and again, that support is very important. And then as always, as educators and workplace wellness professionals, we need to evaluate outcomes because people want to see the bottom line, particularly in workplaces, and that can be helpful in terms of evaluating the impact you've had. So does well-being equal profitability? There are research or studies that say, yes, they do, that it does. So one that I'll just note here was done as a meta-analysis of 339 independent research studies, including the well-being of about 1 million employees, right? This was done by Gallup, and it did show that there was a significant, strong, positive correlation between employee satisfaction with their company and employee productivity and customer loyalty, and a strong negative correlation with staff turnover. So ultimately what this is saying is that higher well-being at work is positively correlated with more business unit level profitability. So if that's one reason that you can say, I am important to your organization, that's a great research study to reference. And then how can we do this in ourselves and others? We do something interesting that has, I guess, really taken hold at MUIH, Maryland University of Integrative Health, which is related to using healing presence within our curriculum. And healing presence has a component of resiliency within it. And what healing presence is in healthcare is really being that person who is self-aware, who doesn't judge, who's mindful, who's compassionate and empathetic, and who listens deeply, who offers support, and who respects others and acts ethically and collaborates, respects that cultural competence, and creates that state of trust, empowerment, and acceptance. So these slides will show qualities of people that are healing presence in everyday life. You don't have to be in a healthcare field to be a healing presence. You could be a caregiver. You could just be someone who interacts with someone at the grocery store. You can see humility, patience, compassion, empathy, respect, integrity, courage, being centered, being flexible, feeling confident and trusting yourself, and not taking yourself so seriously, being lighthearted. All of these things are attributed to being that healing presence, which include resiliency and self-care. A healing presence action plan for yourself might be that you have a goal to become more of a healing presence in areas, and how will that show up? And how can you then cultivate activities to become more of a healing presence? And who can support you in these efforts? So as we close, just take a moment to envision yourself. How do you want to show up in the world? What are you doing? And what are you wearing? And how does it feel? Who are you with? So every moment we can stop ourselves and just say, how can we impact our own well-being and that of others? And this relates to another theory developed by Bandura, who states that in the social cognitive theory, SCT, health behavior theory, there is something called reciprocal determinism. People can be both adopters of change and agents of change. So the people that you are working with can be that change and that example for others in your life. Talk about referrals, creating that collective well-being we're all trying to do in our work. So you've seen dandelions throughout this presentation as a theme. I have them there for a reason. Dandelions are a symbol of resiliency. Many times we've associated them as weeds now, but they could also be thought of as wishes. You blow out the little dandelion puffballs and think about making a wish. And in the weed form, they're actually quite healthful and have some great properties in terms of, have a nice dandelion tea, can be very soothing and cleansing and invigorating, and an herbalist would have a lot of great knowledge about how dandelions, you can put them in a salad, and the greens are very nourishing as well. They're not just weeds. So think about your perspective. Is a dandelion, is something a weed, or is it a wish? Is it something you can think about in terms of managing your mindset and creating the world as you want to see it? And with that, I say, in my practice, I say health is, not a destination, it's a journey. And we're going to have various stages of what we consider health and well-being and flourishing. I didn't go all into the research that I could go into today, but I work with organizations and clients, and there's a lot more we can do to practice all of this and dig deeper. But if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will, is a quote from that book I said, Essentialism. So again, thank you. I'm being represented not just from my own practice, my Healthy Transitions Health Coaching, but I'm also here from Maryland University of Integrative Health, our integrative health education for life, because we all need to keep growing. We have a resilience and well-being course bundle that is masterclasses, all self-paced, online, on demand, 6 of them, all on the topic of well-being, resilience, and stress. We've bundled them together, and this link is available to you in the presentation, and hopefully NANP will include that as well if you're interested in getting a bundle, because there is a discount on all of those if you were to purchase those individually. We bundled those so that's $300 less if you were to pay for those. And we also have a great partnership with NANP. We have a preferred partner benefit. So on any course we offer through professional and community education at MUIH, you can use the code NANP10 and you'll get 10% off at any time. We love our relationship with NANP. And this is how you reach us. If you want to, you can, again, visit our website at muih.edu/CE and email us to connect with how you're using this webinar and other questions you may have at ce@muih.edu. And this is the slide again for our great partnership with NANP and our provider. Many of these courses as well, we have Category 2 approvals, but we also submit those for Category 1 approvals for your CEUs that you all need. And again, it's my pleasure. I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to share what I've learned, what I've researched with you all today. This is how you can reach me professionally as well as, in my own practice. We have the podcast coming out. We're talking about resiliency in the next year or so. But I hope this was helpful to you, not just for your practice, working with clients, but also yourselves. Thank you so much for this opportunity today. And I hope that you're all well and resilient as you move forward.
That was really excellent, Beth. Thank you so much. I certainly learned a couple of things here. The fawn or the fawning and the languishing, I can identify with those. And then the book Essentialism, it is absolutely fantastic. I've listened to it twice on Audible. I was multitasking, but I was hiking. So I think that counts for self-care. And then I also liked your self-care menu. That was really great. And so thank you very much for offering to share those slides, which will also be available for anyone listening. The link is will be there, so you can also get the slides. So I just want to remind everybody that this presentation, it can be viewed in the NANP members area, along with a vast selection of cutting edge webinars. And as mentioned, each webinar includes a corresponding quiz, which is worth 1 continuing education credit. So if you have an interesting topic that you would like to present, or if you know any speakers that you would like us to host, well, if so, please feel free to reach out to me. You can email me or reach me at andrea@namp.org. But this brings us to the end of our discussion. I want to thank everybody for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day. And Beth, thank you so much.